Hi, everybody. Welcome to Have You Ever Heard? This week, I don't have a lot of words. There's not a lot that makes me really completely speechless. But today is one of those days. I may cry just because Teresa Trull is one of my favorite
Oh,
artists of all
oh,
time. She is, yeah, here I go. She is one of the greatest vocalists, songwriters, producers in the world. North Carolina grown,
mhm,
so I resonate a lot as Southern folk.
mhm.
But she is just brilliant, and she made a record that turned 40 this past year. Let it be known, and
Amazing.
this is an amazing project. So we're going to talk about this record and life, and we'll see where the conversation goes. But this record is allegedly the focus. We'll see what happens. But I'm so grateful, just so grateful. Thank you for joining me, Teresa.
And I'm so grateful for your support, Tim. You've been a constant support, and it's always welcome and really, really appreciated.
Well, you are an original
Mm,
in a world of used to be a lot of originals, and
mm,
now to me, 40 years later, you really stand out as an
oh,
original because uh, I make some weird connections with your career because you remind me in some ways, and I don't mean like you sound like her or anything like that, but your trajectory puts me in mind a lot of Tina Marie.
mm,
And I don't
mm.
know if you know Tina's work at all,
Uh,
but
yeah, of course I do.
you were always more aligned at Olivia from my viewpoint. Maybe I'm wrong. You were always more aligned with Black artists at Olivia,
Well,
and
with
that's
basically Southern being raised in the South, yeah, people don't recognize that's actually the indigenous music.
that's
It's the
right.
music that is native to the South. I mean, uh, and it's a it's just such a heavy, heavy influence,
Yes.
and and it's just always the music that I really appreciated.
Well, I want to hear a little bit about. I've read about this in interviews, like very lightly, and people don't talk about it a lot. But I read that you grew up actually singing in choirs in the South, and doing gospel, and you have such an interesting cross blend of music in your early years. But I'm really curious about the North Carolina uh, influence in those years.
Well, the North Carolina influence. One of the most interesting things that happened to me. I worked on a grounds crew. I had a when I was like 18. Duke University was in Durham, where I grew up. I grew up in Durham and Hillsborough, and I didn't have, I was from a very poor family, and my mother died. And for a long story short, I couldn't live at home when I was really young. I left home at a really young age, and so I was working in this grounds crew, and in the grounds crew, I'd say was probably 75% Black. And there were these much older gentlemen on the grounds crew. And then, in fact, women, we had to go to court to be allowed to have the job. A group of three of us went to court to complain that why can't we have this job? And I really needed the job. So we were working on the grounds crew, and my nickname was Squirrel because everybody said I did everything too fast. And but there was this beautiful guy on the grounds crew named Hazel Burke. Now I had been listening to gospel since I was little, but he was a guy that was originally in the group Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry. Do you ever remember hearing
Yes.
about?
Yes.
And it was originally a trio. And basically the reason why he was still in North Carolina working on a grounds crew is they left their families to go pursue music, and he refused to leave his family. And he
Okay.
was this beautiful musician. And we would do these things like all the grounds crew on Friday would go tardy, buy a whole bunch of beer, and go into the Duke Woods where no one could find us and play music and sing. And he was the most amazing guy. But I think in churches, when I was younger. They were definitely not gospel churches, but my interest was completely gospel. And what happened, and I don't mean religiously, I just mean musically.
Yes, yes.
And ever since I was little, I mean, Aretha Franklin was my favorite artist, and her gospel album just was still to this day is my favorite album.
Yes.
And so, uh, but I, but still, church gave me my music education.
Yes. Well,
So,
wow.
yeah.
Wow.
But I went to my father took me around to lots of revivals and stuff to try and get me to sing, which I really hated. I was really shy, but at any rate, yeah, North Carolina definitely had a big influence on my singing
Well,
and my eating.
yes. Well, and I've got to say, I mean, I've lived in a lot of places. Uh, but when I got to upstate New York, I would cook for people. They would come over and they would say, "Oh my God, what did you do to, I don't know, just the simplest things. What did
I
you do
know.
with this chicken? What did you do?" I was like, "I seasoned it."
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all.
That's so good. Oh,
But
I ran away I ran away from my family, I think back in when I was about 16, ran away for a very short time to Philadelphia.
wow.
And I couldn't even, I was very ignorant about any food other than Southern food. And I remember my first experience, I went into a delicatessen and ordered a bagel with grape jelly, and and I was laughed out of the place. Not to mention, a Southern accent is so used in television to depict stupidity.
Yes.
And so right from the very beginning, I thought, well, okay, this is the first thing I have to change is my Southern accent. I have to really, in fact, New Zealand. I live in New Zealand now. For anyone who doesn't know, but I New Zealand is the first place I've ever been where they love my accent.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Pretty much everywhere else, it's just so common for the Southern accent to be sort of depicted as not intelligent.
Well, when I first moved to the city, I'll never forget getting on a bus and I asked the driver a question. Her name was Iris. I will never forget this. And
Mm-hmm.
she said, "No, this is the bus." And I said, "Thank you, ma'am." And she said, "Ma'am?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Where are you from?" And I said,
Mm-hmm.
"Nashville." And she said,
Mm-hmm.
"You won't make it long here, not calling people ma'am." She said, "Thank you. It's so respectful." She said, "But you won't make it here." She was
Mm-hmm.
right. But I'll never, I mean, the accent is such a giveaway that so when it's how you talk, you don't
Mm-hmm.
recognize you carry it.
It's funny because I came out pretty young. My first record was when I was, you know, kind of angry. All of a sudden it dawns on you what's going on, and
Yes.
you have your little separatist, gyration, and and so what happened was I remember my father. My family was quite poor, and my father, retired, had gotten a job driving a bus, driving people to the what's that clinic for losing weight that's so big in Durham? I forget what it is. It's associated with the university. But anyway, he got this job transporting people from the airport. And he was driving, he had a little name tag, and someone saw this name was Trull, and it was apparently someone who knew my music. And they said, uh, oh, no, it wasn't that. I take it back. It was just somebody asking him about his family. And he says, "Oh, yeah, I have 3 kids." And they go, "What do they do?" And he said, "My daughter, she sings music. This, my middle daughter sings music." And I had come out to my dad, and he was so supportive of me musically and was being really supportive of me. But he's from Tennessee, and literally his family was a generation of people who lived in the mountains. I mean, he was very intelligent and educated, but definitely came from that background. The stories he has of living in the mountains are crazy. Anyway, so this woman says, "Well, what kind of music does she do?" And my father had to really think about it. And then he goes, "Well, I'd say she does feeling music."
Oh,
And
it's good.
that's so Southern. I mean, honestly, I do miss the South.
Well, and this is a good segue because what your music is so transcendent of genre, because that first record, The Ways a Woman Can Be, um, was funk, it was soul, it was country, it was, did I say folk? It was, you know,
And it was Linda Tillery.
and
Yeah.
I was going to make that really important connection to who produced that record, who, I'm sure as a first time making a record, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but having the guidance of someone that had also worked in, a multiplicity of genres had to be incredibly helpful.
Well, hey, I had never even sung with headphones on. I mean, I'd never been in a studio, never been in a studio ever. So Linda and I, for many years, were besties. We got, and I was in Linda's band for many years. And oh yeah, Vicki Randall and I were her backup singers.
That's right. And I knew you did the Varied Voices of Black Women tour,
which is a little silly, but it was still really, I was very honored. But yeah.
Yeah.
It was a teeny bit of a trespass. I wanted to, but it's important. It's still important. I really enjoyed that tour. Was really amazing and highly, highly enlightening.
Well, and your album came, if I'm not mistaken, the year before Varied Voices. Is that right?
Well, I think it was recorded much before that, but yeah. Okay. You're asking the wrong person. I have a brain like a steel sieve.
Ha! Well, I'm curious about then the years though leading up to Let It Be Known, because it's like when we hear you on Let It Be Known, it's the same woman. We know it's the same woman. You sound similar, but you're more wide open, even if that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny though. I think it was that record had a lot of travails. To explain it a little easier, I had come to Olivia on the virtue of a song that a DJ sent to Olivia, and I was living in New York and just barely. I was really, really not getting by very well there, and so I went out to California. I mean, to me, I was still so naive that to me, Olivia was a Warner Brothers for women. I mean, practically the way it interpreted to me. And I thought, I wasn't thinking, oh my God, Lesbian Central. I was thinking, oh my God, a job, a job doing music, a way I can make money doing music. I mean, that was the way I was thinking. And I'm not making a lot of money, just a job, it's
a living,
survival and a chance to do a job doing something I enjoyed. And I thought, this is fantastic. And then, and it was politicizing me at the same time. I had just coming politicized. And but the thing that happened with the evolution, I mean, Let It Be Known was quite a ways after that. And what had happened with me, that I was starting to part a little bit. I was friends, there was Linda, Mary Watkins, and I was sort of in this ilk where I thought, you know what, my viewpoint of this, if you really want to make some headway politically, what you have to do is, the important thing is the actual artist's message. And then you want to produce that in the most economical and high quality way possible, so that you have money to do something with it. So in my mind, where I drew the line in terms of separatism was really purely with the artist. I thought, what you do is you get locally the best musicians, and this was the start of my production career. But see, Olivia felt really differently. At that point, a lot of people had left Olivia. There were only a few of us left, I think 3 of us at that point, or maybe a little more. And I was greatly diverged in philosophy from Judy, who was the president of the company. And she had every right to have her viewpoint, but her viewpoint was separatism all the way, give as many women the jobs as possible. And it's very valid. But in terms of the far-reaching goal, I still believe more in my philosophy, which is we have to be commercially competitive. And so they did, granted, tried to, and it was, and that sort of thing was really difficult for anyone who did music that wasn't folk music, because then you're talking about the budget on Let It Be Known. I could have done the same album for 20% of the price, and probably even at this point better, you know, like in my viewpoint, you know, I could have really done but the problem was searching for, we brought musicians from all over the country, and Betty Rowland, who was really great, produced it, but it was really expensive, just
Really?
super expensive. And it basically started my demise at Olivia, because then the really unfortunate thing happened was Alex Dopkin boycotted it, started a boycott of it because of the cover. And she said that there was subliminal advertising in the cover, and sent it off to did you know about this?
I've read that this is said, and every time I look at this album cover, I try to find it and I don't see it.
It's not there, because what we did was, it's not there because what we did was, we also, because we were in complete control of the artwork, what we did was we sent Alex's new record to the same guy who found, and he found all kinds of subliminal stuff in her record too. He's a fruitcake. He was a fruitcake, you know. So, but it honestly did really hurt the sales of it, and it was kind of especially on the East Coast, and also it was new for people to see this kind of, you know, what later people called a lipstick lesbian. You know, it's like,
yes.
So it was just a little bit before its time, I feel, and it sort of cemented the whole idea with Olivia that I was going to be too expensive an artist, you know, basically, if I wanted to follow. And I really thought, I said, well, let's not do it expensively. But it wasn't popular. And at that point, I was sort of asked to leave. But so that was really interesting. But the honest truth was, it really made the fact that made us diverge, along with my early stuff with Olivia, made me who I am. Like, I would have never been a producer if Let It Be Known hadn't hit all these kind of bumps, and I was put out to be on my own. Wow. And what's really funny is that my associations, you know, like, there's some quite, the people that I learned to produce by writing songs for LA. And when Olivia had bought this apartment building that was just in East Oakland, and we all had apartments really cheaply in it, and it was kind of a collective thing. Yes. And I was moving into my apartment, and I was painting it, and I put on the gospel channel. It was a Sunday, and I was singing along, and I heard someone yell up to me, and I looked out the window, and the guy says, "Hey, who's singing in there?" And I go, and he was my neighbor, and I said, "Oh, that's just me. I'm sorry. Am I being too loud?" And he goes, "Hell no." He said, "Wow, I would have never thought it was you." He said, "But we're having a picnic. Why don't you come over? We're having a barbecue." And I went over there, and that's how I met Sheila E., Ray Oviedo, all these people that played with George Duke and with Herbie Hancock, who George Duke was one of my absolute most favorite musicians. And so, and that's how I started getting associated with those people. And when Let It Be Known came around, basically I thought, I really want to have a connect. I've always been a good networker, and I thought I'd really like to somehow get into this Oakland musical scene. I think I'll go over to Ray's, because he's the one that lived next door, and I'll say, "Hey, look, I'm doing a record. Let's write some songs together." And that started a whole career with Ray and I, where we wrote songs for LA and had a couple of gold records. And we started writing. I started being his lyricist, and we had a band called God, what was it called? Rhythmus 21. Rhythmus 21, and we played like the Greek Music Festival in Berkeley and everything. It was a huge fusion band full of some real, music stars, you know, really, really amazing legends in terms of musicians. So I got a really incredible musical education from my demise. And they sort of felt like that's what I needed to do anyway, to be honest. They said, you know, if that's what you want to do, you need to go do it, you know. But I still to this day think that that would have been a good way to go, to take the artist that really has the message you want to promote and make it as viable as possible and as economically as possible.
Well, and this is, you know, one of the things is the core like feminist ideology, you know, that Olivia had so frequently in their work. But I also hear you, and maybe I'm hearing too much into it too. Maybe I'm looking at the cover, I don't know. But what I hear you doing is also finding a common place with people that may not have any idea about what feminism is, that may not, you're finding this common ground in a sense. With a song like
well, it has to be heard.
Yes,
it has to be heard to make any difference. And if you're preaching to the choir, you know, then that's good. But I mean, it's wonderful and it's very sustaining for those people. But if your ideology is to reach beyond that, then that's pretty, you know, yeah. But there's a lot of ways to go about anything.
That's right.
And it doesn't invalidate any process. It just means that, you know, in fact, very often there have to be a lot of different processes to make something work.
That's right. How, well, and I think about a song like There's a Light, which you didn't write.
No, Julie wrote it.
Julie Homey. Am I saying her name right? I want to make sure I'm saying it right.
Yeah, Julie Homey. Yeah.
Julie Homey. And so there's this interesting thing that happens with a lot of, particularly the Olivia records. And maybe because women's music and gospel music, contemporary Christian music, are like two of the, in some ways they couldn't be more opposite. But they're also the only two forms that I can think of music that are not rooted in a style or a sound, but that are rooted in a message. And so you have like this multiplicity of sounds within the genre, but there's usually a common thread in messaging. So There's a Light to me also reminds me of what could be a gospel song. There's a light, have you seen it? Growing stronger, burning brighter all the time. When it shines down on me, it clears a path so wide that it keeps on, showing me what I feel inside. I saw it burning in my own eyes, but I didn't recognize the sign of my desire, the sign of a woman, the love of a woman for her woman. Gorgeous,
Yeah.
Gorgeous lyric.
And brave, very brave.
And accessible, which is such a, you know, it's like we think about brave being very in your face in some ways, and it is. Yeah. But her phrasing and the way she turns the phrase and then the way you deliver it is so subtle that you can hear it and it may not register the first time. And then you keep listening to it and you go, oh, that's what's happening there. Wow. And so I think that's what's powerful about this record in particular, because in many ways, the sound, the feeling music grabs you first. And then that message gets a chance to just sit in there. And it really does transcend whatever your affiliation is, wherever you sit, and it makes you think. And so I'm curious about when you would go, how did you, I'm jumping around a little bit in terms of sequence of how albums happen, but where did how did you and Julie meet? And then B,
I'm wondering how much of the truth I should tell is what I wonder. Julie, let's just say, I don't think Julie would mind me saying this. Julie is basically a very accomplished musician. She was very steeped in gospel. She studied with Ed Kelly, who is one of Oakland's finest organ players and piano players ever. Okay. He's no longer with us, but and I was in his wife's gospel choir in Oakland. Wow. But Julie is a very fine piano player and very steeped in gospel,
Okay.
gospel playing. But I think that, but she is straight. She's very, very straight, and but lovely. And I think that I first met Julie at the Champagne Music Festival, and I was playing with Linda. I think I might have done a gig, I might have done a show of my own, but I think I was there with Linda and her band. And Linda thought Julie was really cute and asked me to go up and kind of be, I used to be a little bit her Valentine messenger, a little bit, you know, go up at her wing woman. And it didn't quite work out the way Linda had planned, or the way I had planned for that matter. And I used to always feel like in my early years that I was like somebody getting knocked over the head and dragged to a cave a little bit. You know, it's like I was very, people would see me as some wild child. In fact, it's funny. I talked to the Top Twins, and they always talk about the first time they met me, and they thought in New Zealand. It's so funny because people are so not up themselves, as they say here, and they don't like people that seem up themselves. And they said, "Oh my God, you were just," they just thought I was going to be the most despicable person ever when they first met me. They saw me like something in boots and a dress, laying on a piano, singing and goofing off with somebody. And they thought, "Oh, she's so up herself. That's just, you know, she's terrible." And now we're best friends, right? But I think a lot of my people would see me more as this person who they probably thought had tons of affairs or something, but I was basically this prudish, naive little Southern girl who knew about having those feelings through my music, but not in my life. And so most of my relationships at that point were people hitting me over the head and dragging me off to cave like I wasn't even aware. And I think that's a little bit what happened with Julie. So,
okay.
But Julie, like I said, is a beautiful person and a fine, fine musician. But that's how I met her, trying to introduce her to Linda.
Okay. And how did There's a Light come to you? How did it come to you?
What do you mean? Because we played, after that, Julie and I started a duo and played together.
Okay.
And so Julie wrote that as something for our duo. Julie wrote that in musicians, kind of for the record.
Wow. Okay. So, you know, my thought was when you would go out as part of this duo, I'm assuming you weren't just singing at like feminist gatherings, you know, or women's events, you know. So what was, when you would do these songs out in the world, like what was the response?
Oh, and now wait, are you talking about Julie's song, or are you talking about Let It Be Known?
Let It Be Known, period.
Oh, well, see, now that is a beautiful thing, because the one thing, and this is what I was going to show you some pictures about, is the greatest thing that evolved for me out of that was, in my mind, the most glorious 10-piece women's band that ever happened. In my mind, it was because there was a group of us that promoted this record and toured on it. And it was, check it out, it was Bernice Brooks on drums, wow, Sheila E. on percussion and drums. The three backup singers were Linda Tillery, Najla Edine, and Lady Bianca, who are all in Oakland, quite famous. On piano, we had Susan Muscarella, who's a very famous jazz player, and Joy Jolks on bass. And every so often, June Millington was come and play guitar.
Oh my God.
And it was really amazing. I remember getting a review because I remember once Sheila E. and I, when we were in New York, we went shopping and both bought these kind of what was really trendy at the time, these super like shoulder padded jackets, and we wore little teeny ties and high heels with pants, and you know, we were just totally into it. And I always felt like it was wrong to tell anyone what to wear. I was never one of those that like, you know, how people say all the backup people dress in black. I'm just like, screw that. You dress whatever you want to wear. And I have to say, Najla Edine and Lady Bianca were outrageous. I mean, just absolutely outrageous. And they sang on Let It Be Known too.
Right.
And I got a review once in the Guardian or maybe the San Francisco Examiner that said that when Sheila and I were wearing our little suits, and then we had Naj, they said that looked like we were pimping the band. The review said. I was just like, well, screw you. People are allowed to dress however they want to dress, and I think we're all quite beautiful. So screw you.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you what, that band was just really fun, really, really fun, and crazy personalities. Yeah, just absolutely crazy. But once again, Linda really helped me there because there was quite an education for me in a lot of ways, let it be known. I had never, I performed with a band quite a bit when I was younger. I was in a band when I was still in high school.
Okay.
But for me, performing in front of such a big band, Linda was the person that really helped me learn how to head a band like that. Because for a long time, I mean, I had a band of stars. It's like I felt sort of, I felt a little insecure, and somehow I thought these people have to be featured. I can't. But Linda taught me. She said, "Well, what you've got to understand is, no matter how great people are in your band, they're only going to be as good as you are as a front person." And so I had to learn to calm down and focus more on myself, a little bit.
It's hard work.
It is hard work. It is hard work. And it was still very early for me. I was still quite young, and I think, it was all this songwriting with Ray, because what we had to do is we had to compete in our songwriting, and let's see, there's 2 songs on there that Ray and I wrote. I know.
They are Carry It On.
Yeah, Carry On and Be Careful.
That's right.
God, I didn't even remember that we did Carry On the record. Anyway, so what we had to do is we were competing with LA writers, like famous people like Allee Willis. Do you know who that is?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. So Allee Willis, for instance, when she's getting ready to sell songs to people, she would take $70,000 and do like an album produced with LA studio musicians of her songs and take these and sell them. So at that time, it's different from Nashville. Like in Nashville, that what they wanted to hear when you sold songs to Nashville was just a very simple rendition.
Yes.
But in LA, completely different. They wanted to hear the potential of the song. And so Ray and I had to do productions that rivaled things like Allee Willis, but in a very small budget. So we had a great stable of great musicians in Oakland, and which we used, and that I went on to use in my production career. And so it just ended up being quite an education in learning how to produce and understanding the dynamics of recording and how to record and all the frequencies, and then I started developing my own philosophies about it.
And were you, and I know I've talked to a lot of artists who say, well, I should have gotten a co-producing credit on this. How involved were you in the development of Let It Be Known?
I think mostly just involved in arrangements of songs. I was not, I was not, I could not say, I did not have any real production stuff going on. In arrangement stuff, yes, and that's a very important part of production. But no, that was my first production was after that. Yeah, no, I would not. I mean, Betty Rowland came from a slightly more old school but beautiful thing. She had a really strong relationship on Broadway and with Nina Simone and some other really important people, and I think she was probably from the school of people like Arif Martin and people like that who were fantastic producers. Arif Martin, probably one of my favorites, but it was just, I think in a large way, we were all hobbled slightly by trying to find appropriate women musicians. Because to be honest, in that time and age, there weren't a lot of women that were playing the drums. There weren't a lot of women that had kind of made really big ventures into that, or if they were inaccessible or couldn't do it, or You know what I mean? It made it much, much harder.
Well, and I'd like to, also highlight some of the musicians, and I want to talk about arrangements. Um, but I mean, Jareen Jackson, who I think is such an unsung, uh, great musician. I mean, Jareen has, I mean, her work on BBK Roche, in particular, and then both of your albums, right? Jareen played on, I think, the Ways.
Jareen didn't play on Let It Be Known, I don't think.
Okay, because I'm looking at her. She's on the credits.
Oh, she is. Well, then she did.
Okay.
Then she did. But I couldn't remember. Honestly, I can't. If you asked me who played guitar on it, I might have a difficult time remembering.
When you had to,
yeah.
You had Jareen and you had Joyce Cooling.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Wow, wow. It is quite a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, so who else do you want to talk about?
Well, I'm really curious about the organist because Linda Wiggins, who I'm not familiar with.
Oh yeah.
Linda Wiggins killed this whole record.
Yeah. Well, Linda Wiggins, it's funny. It was through Linda Wiggins that I actually met Barbara Higbee.
Really?
Because Linda Wiggins at the time when Julie was, I was just seriously into gospel, and when Julie wasn't available later on, like she was doing some other stuff, I was looking for somebody different. I was looking for a pianist to play with, and I went through a few, but one was Linda Wiggins, and I actually worked with her exclusively with just the organ, and we did the Reno Gay Rodeo, which wow. Had God, what's her name? Man, who's the famous acerbic comedian that recently died? Who, very New York. Joan Rivers.
Yes.
Yeah, Joan Rivers was the host of the Reno Gay Rodeo and came in on a big truck and trailer with fake Clydesdales and all these handkerchiefs in her back pocket. Just like it was a funny big deal. And turns out that Barbara was playing with a bluegrass group at the same time I was playing with Linda Wiggins.
Wow.
Yeah.
The connections are so interesting, like how really it is about being in one place at the right time, right moment with the right person. The organ, and so I guess the organ, I have to then jump to the arrangement of every woman, because today I was listening to the Sweet Honey record, Believe I'll Run On, that had that song on it, just to kind of refresh myself again. And I went, how you heard where you took that song from the original is spectacular.
Oh, thanks.
It's a great
I always
song.
Felt Bernice felt so, but I'm not sure. But she was very kind to let me do it, and that was a lot formulated in my head, and then like I sort of sang the melody of it the way I wanted it, and then Julie was highly responsible for the accompaniment underneath. And but there are little things that I added, like I really put the little holiness routine in the end of You're My Home and things like that. Yes. It was just Julie and I were very kismet on that, and of course Linda was very on board with it.
Well, it's such, I mean, okay, You're My Home. I mean, that's probably it's hard. I can't say that. I was going to say it's my favorite cut on the record, but I don't know. I can't say I have a favorite. This record is just so epic in every way, but You're My Home is such a sing-along. And then you put the shouting track on the end, and it's just so brilliant. It's so brilliant because nobody, and particularly on a studio record, to capture that is really hard to do because it's such a spirit feel moment.
Well, it's really hard to do unless you have on tap Linda Tillery, Lady Bianca, and Najla Dean. I mean, for Christ's sake. And Julie. I mean, literally. It's just like, it's one of my favorite grooves in the world, the Holiness groove. And and it was just, oh my God. And to be quite honest, Lady Bianca, you probably don't know who she is, but she was probably the most famous R&B and gospel singer at the time in Oakland. And she wasn't just that, she was a personality. She was who every drag queen would aspire to be. I
Wow.
mean, you know, was a force, just an absolute force. And my most favorite part of that whole record were the backup vocals. And I have to say, they were really indulgent, but we loved doing it. It was just, I was, I did not care that it was indulgent. I thought you don't get these moments very often. Let's just let it
Oh.
roll.
Were you singing the backgrounds as well with them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Wow. I mean,
A
those
lot of it.
harmonies are particularly, hold on, when you wrote with Mary. No, You in My Life, it's your song. You
Yeah.
in My Life, those
Oh,
backgrounds are just magical.
oh, I tell you what, too. And what's really funny is we just did this kind of revival, and I tried to revive that song and tried to get my friends to sing it, but it just was not going to happen. You know, like I needed some of my other friends to do it.
Well, and I also have
And they still remain unnamed, but you know, it's like people who are great singers, but just couldn't quite get the vibe on that song.
well, and you did an incredible live solo version of that song on the Michigan '85 album. That
Mm.
is,
Well, that was quite a big hit for Barbara and I. Barbara and I started almost every show with it, and it got us in places like the Vancouver Folk Festival and stuff, places where we shouldn't have
really,
gone, but we went. And that I remember we were at the Vancouver Folk Festival right when Katie Lang was doing her first shows there, and it was it was just a song for some reason that really spoke to large audiences, and I don't know why. It's very overtly about lesbians, but you know, all the same, people just super related to it.
yes. Well, I think that's, again, I keep going back to this, but I think that's the thing that's really powerful about this album is, I mean, to me, this is like, it sounds like, I shouldn't say it sound, I don't mean it in that it sounds like, it's the same kind of force that made an Aretha carry gospel into the rest of the world. She took that gospel sound that had been so, sequestered, if you will, in one space. And yes, I mean, people took gospel and made soul music, and created a secularized version of gospel, and took that out into the world. But Aretha was so, no matter what she was singing, that was gospel.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what she was doing, there was that extra thing that only gospel provides. And to me, that's what this record carried. I mean, it is. I
Well,
dare anybody.
I just want to say that I worship at the at the altar of Aretha, and I would never ever presume to be one iota of who she is, but
Understood.
I would say that it is true that that I was very keen on carrying that identity into what I did. And basically, when I ended up writing songs in LA, we were writing R&B.
Mhm.
Uh, Ray had a little more of a fusion and a jazz influence than I did, but basically we were writing R&B
Yes.
songs for like the Whispers and
The
people like
Whispers.
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I also have to say, like, you wrote some incredible cuts on Linda Tillery's Secrets
Oh,
record.
yeah. It was so funny because we did this huge, like 45th reunion of Olivia or something, and Linda was there. And now there's sort of the up and comers, the mid, like their 40s, like Skip the Needle, right? All the girls on Skip the Needle, who are all great, great people. And they're all sitting in the audience. And just like Linda was singing, they were like, oh my God, oh my God. And they just know me as, I don't know who they know me as. They came to see a show where I did with Barb and Chris. And then Linda goes, "This is a song written by myself and by Ray Oviedo and Teresa Trull," and they were like, "What?" They had no idea of my background.
Yes.
They had no idea of my influences and my background and how many songs. And they were, it was sort of, it started a whole friendship with us, with the
Wow.
younger people. I mean, my association with Vicky. Vicky's one of my best friends ever, and
Yeah.
always will be. But it got me to sort of start to know the girls in that band, who is a really fine band, and it was really fun for me, because I really am. I'm really not that active in music, except for doing these tours with Barb and Chris. Were really easy tours to do, but I did really follow my other passion, So it's just I was doing it, but not in with the same. It's certainly not with the same thing of trying to succeed in a career. Uh,
Well, I think you are. So when I say this too, I don't want to sound academic.
mm,
But there are people who, and I'm one of those people. When I did music, it was one of my greatest challenges was being what I've read in academia is they call it betweeners, people who are between many worlds. And so they are not easily classifiable.
mm-hmm.
And sometimes their, the physical attributes betray where they fit, in some ways. And so that makes within capitalism, it makes
Yes.
selling things a little more challenging
Oh,
because
definitely. The Geminis of the world.
yes. And you are, I mean, in every way, I think you're one of those people, um, that you are well rooted in so many worlds that it makes things challenging to sell.
Well, Count Basie, I think it was him that's said this. I could be misquoting who said it, but so he said there are only two kinds of music: good music and bad music.
That's right.
And the thing is if you're a musical person, I mean, I hear incredibly, you can hear Black influences so strongly in country music, and
That's right.
it's like any music can be soulful, really.
Well, and the Queen herself said that,
Yeah,
that soul is not a genre, it is a feeling.
yeah, yeah.
Soul
That's
is,
exactly right. Exactly right. And you've got people like one of Linda Tillery's most favorite artists of all times is James Taylor. She just, he's a soulful guy. It's just like
yes.
he's just as white can be, but he's quite soulful. It's just there. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, nobody probably would have ever guessed that one of Tina Marie's favorite artists was Joni Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just
Mm-hmm.
these things that we love, that we feel, that we resonate with, that aren't necessarily where we land or how we end
Yeah,
up presenting, in the world. But I
yeah.
want to encourage people because you have an incredible catalog beyond Let It Be Known, which I really
It's
hope
out of print.
is out of print. And so I do want to ask about that because I would really hope, and I would, I just want to say I'm assuming that where does it sit? Does that still stay in the Olivia catalog?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was the only way I could have gotten it would be to buy it,
Okay.
and I just don't. That's I'm afraid financially that's not a priority for me. I would love to reissue some of these things, and I would have loved to have done it, but I would have had to buy it.
Got it.
The nice thing is from there on, and Unexpected is out of
Yes.
print too, which
Yes.
is really a shame. I'd love to. I mean, I'd love to have that catalog, and I have to say, like Step Away, I did with Redwood Records, and
Yes.
when Redwood Records went under, they just sent me the
Really?
tapes. Yeah, so,
Wow.
which was really great. So
And that,
that's a record that I own.
and
So
people
that's
can download it and stream it. It is on Spotify, as is Playtime with
mm-hmm.
Barbara Higbee. And another one, we play this song incessantly, uh, Flow.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I really like that one.
I think we played it 2 times in a row yesterday and sang it loudly. Flow is, and so I just want to encourage people to
Yeah.
download and stream if you have not already. what you can get of Teresa's catalog. And go back. You can find these albums on Discogs, eBay. Pick them up because these are The Ways a Woman Can Be. Classic albums that.
Can you believe that people thought that cover was so racy back then?
It's really amazing to me. And my husband said to me, he said, you have to ask her whose idea it was to put the bird on her head because it's so.
The thing is I'm a bird person. I've always had birds. I love birds. I'm obsessed with birds and horses. And the photographer had that cockatiel. And that cockatiel just knew me for who I was and just immediately came over and got on my head. And he was about to shoo it away. I said, oh, no, that's who I am. You need to leave that bird there.
It's so funny, too, that it was an accident in a sense, because it's like a little bird told me, and the album's called Let It Be Known. I mean,
I never even thought of it that way.
I thought it was so intentional.
No, it wasn't intentional at all. And for me, it was just like, I thought, okay, this is important. This is an appendage of me. This needs to be there. Birds.
That's so, the first time I saw it, I swear to God, I thought, that's so smart. A little birdie told me.
Tim, I hate to break to you, but I'm not quite that clever.
Well, and we'll have to come back because I'd love to talk about, you made A Step Away, which is in my mind also very similar. I mean, there's like this thread, I look at Holly's Don't Hold Back album, which to me was a very similar in where it could have gone.
Mm-hmm.
Just very interesting projects, very interesting.
But yeah, and so evolved in terms of, like the different people that I played with. And right at that time was when I was getting involved with Bonnie Hayes and the Wild Combo.
Yes.
And a lot of that. And she's just the most amazing songwriter ever. And probably the best band I ever did to educate myself singing.
Wow.
That singing backups, what people don't understand, singing supporting vocals is much harder than singing leads because you have to control your vibratos and blend. And in Bonnie's band, and as a musician, you'll understand this, my parts, they were 4-part harmonies where you dance the entire time in this pretty loud rock band. But the 4-part harmonies, I pretty much always had the second.
Okay.
So I'm doing the second interval in the chord next to the root. And to sing that on these long sustained notes and chords is really hard. And I had to learn to do it. And because her music is rife with incredible voicings. She was just a genius.
Yes.
Are you familiar with much of her writing?
I've got the record that you were on. I've got that album. I think that was like,
she's will ever be famous in my mind for all the publishing company says, oh, you'll never sell a song that starts with, hey, shut up. And that was Have a Heart on Bonnie Raitt's record that just sold millions.
Nick of Time. That's right.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. There's so much more we could talk about. So we're going to have to do season 3 and talk about A Step Away in that era.
No worries at all. It's fun to talk about it.
Well, I'm so grateful. And again, I just want to route people. If people want to find you, and you're writing a book.
I'm trying to. I've been having a little bit of problem. It's sort of it's just been the accident sort of set me back a little bit. You think that, I have all this time, I can do it, but for a while I couldn't use my right arm, and it was just, it's just really difficult. And I kind of got out of the space. I was writing a book though about horse training.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit different, but everybody kept saying you should expand that to your life a little bit. But so I'm just letting it kind of percolate.
Well, and how can people stay up on what you're doing? What's the best way for people to?
That's a really good question. I still have my website, Earl, but I just haven't had the finances or the way withal to. I'm not very good at that stuff, and it requires a lot of time for me, and I just haven't been very good about putting it back up, either financially or time wise. But I'm not, I guess maybe on Facebook. The
Okay.
most common thing I have, but it's mostly about my horse stuff, is I have a couple of Facebook sites. I have my own site, you know,
Right.
which is not really a fan page, but just a personal page. It's under my name. And
Okay.
then on Facebook, my company here in New Zealand is called NZ Horse Help or NZ Horse Help. And I
Okay.
have a couple of pages on that. And that would be the easiest way to keep in touch with me on Facebook.
But I'm so, so grateful that you all came and spent a little your hour with us and to hear about this great music. Look up Teresa Trull. You won't regret it. Until next week,
Uh,
keep the
Thank you so much, Tim. Love you dearly.